Today on Thumb Together, we're taking a look at a film about a human man who's dealing with his own life and his own sets of everyday mundane problems when he comes across a mysterious little blue creature who comes from another world. At first, the human guy and the blue creature, they don't get along, they find each other annoying, they just want to get out of one another's hair, but then the human man befriends the blue creature, understands the true value of friendship, helps the little guy defeat a nefarious villain who's played by a very famous real-world comedian, and then the two of them go their separate ways with the human man understanding the true meaning of life and friendship and coming to grips with his own life's problems. Yes, folks, today we're taking a look at the Smurfs. I mean, Sonic the Hedgehog. Let's get started. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Thumb Together. My name is Andrew Fantasia, and today we're going to be talking about Sonic the Hedgehog together. As usual, if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to give it a thumbs up and give some love to that subscribe button as well. I grew up as a Sega Genesis kid. That's a fun fact. Write it down in your book of fun facts. If you don't have a book, send me your mailing address. I'm mailing you a book. I started off with the Nintendo. That was my thing for my tiny childhood. And then when I got into like my peak childhood, which in this situation is like 6 to 10, I guess. Doesn't sound like a long time, but to a kid, trust me, it's a long time. I had the Sega Genesis. I remember my dad getting it for me, and it came with Sonic the Hedgehog. That was my first Sega Genesis game, and we played the hell out of that game. We all did. I loved Sonic. I even loved Sonic 2. Those two games were magnifique. Then when I was a little bit older, my cousin Ryan gifted me with a Sega Dreamcast, and lo and behold, what's on the Sega Dreamcast but two really good Sonic games. So Sonic has been sort of part of my video game resume for a long time. But I didn't go into this with any kind of chip on my shoulder. I didn't go into this with any kind of grudging expectations thinking they better do this and they better get that right, otherwise I hate this forever. I just went in thinking, please just be a good video game movie, because those don't really exist, with maybe these two following exceptions. So along comes Sonic the Hedgehog, and how do I feel about this movie? Well, I think I'm on mixed ground. I'm like a bag of mixed nuts and raisins, a party mix, a trail mix, if you will. That's how I feel about Sonic, and here's why. The Sonic the Hedgehog movie is a decent buddy road trip movie. It's not a very good Sonic the Hedgehog movie. And I think the problem stems from that little Smurfs comparison I made earlier. You have a lot of room to play in the Sonic universe. I know the games don't really give you much. It's just you running around killing robots and saving the environment and stuff. But in other parts of Sonic lore, in that Saturday morning cartoon that, as far as Sonic fans will tell you, is still the best Sonic story ever told, and some of the Archie comics that Sonic has been in, the storyline is pretty well developed. There's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of characters, a lot of worlds, and all of those take place in these other worlds, on these other planets and such. Every character is an anthropomorphic animal or like a weird human who doesn't quite look human. This movie could have taken place in any of those kinds of storylines or just kind of played around in that sandbox, but it didn't. It chose to go the very mundane route that all of these movies choose to do, which is like, oh, here's this fantasy character, let's drop him in the real world. I don't understand why Hollywood hasn't learned their lesson yet. That didn't work for Smurfs twice. It didn't work for He-Man. It didn't work for Alvin and the Chipmunks a grand total of 4 times. Why can't these old IPs exist in the world where their old IPs existed? I don't get the whole put them in the real world and see what happens. I'll tell you what happens. Nothing. That's why this movie has such mediocre reviews. But I didn't say I hated the movie, I said I was mixed. And the reason is because I got a lot of positive stuff to say as well. I went to see this movie on a Thursday night, which is when I see most of my films so I can have my reviews up on time. Thursday nights in my area at the movies are pretty dead. I'm maybe one of 4 people in an audience. Last night, a Thursday, on Sonic the Hedgehog, I was in an almost packed theater. And what was great about it was I got there early, so I was watching the other folks coming in and seeing who was coming to watch Sonic the Hedgehog. And there were 3 groups. There were young kids with their parents. I'm talking like 8-year-old kids, maybe even a little younger, who are Sonic fans of the current games. There were teenage kids, high school age, who I was looking at them and I'm like, okay, you probably grew up on like the crappy Xbox and like late Dreamcast Sonic games, but cool. you are Sonic fans too. And then there were people around my age, adults, who were old school Sonic fans. I saw every demographic walk into that theater. And guess what, folks? That was a really vocal theater. Everybody, kid, teen, and adult alike, were reacting positively to what was going on. They were laughing at the jokes, whether or not they were corny. They were taking delight in Dr. Robotnik. They were taking delight in Sonic, because Sonic really steals the show. He's great in this. And when happens, which I'll get to later in spoilers, everybody in that theater reacted with the same shocked gasps, no matter how old they were. Now, this film has become infamous for, more than anything else, its redesign of the character Sonic. If you remember back last spring when they showed off the trailer, Sonic looked grotesque, is the nicest word I can think of for this. Yeah, he looked awful, and it just goes to show how sometimes, not always, but sometimes fans speaking out about something might end up doing some good. Because what we ended up with was a really great, really expressive, and downright cute Sonic. Look how cute he is. Look at his little face. He's got a ring in his hand. This character almost ended up looking like a monstrosity, but thankfully we got a better looking Sonic out of the deal, and maybe, just maybe, that means we'll get more movies in the future, but more on that later. Jim Carrey playing Dr. Robotnik, I think I was really pleasantly surprised with how this character ended up being. Here's the thing, guys. You have Jim Carrey playing a very cartoonish villain, all right? That description alone probably paints a picture in your head, doesn't it? But that picture in your head is kind of wrong. It would have been so easy for this version of Dr. Robotnik to just be a goofball, to just be, running around, mugging at the camera, being like, I built a robot, blah, blah, and just be this giant idiot who bounces off the walls and says stupid things and gets befuddled and foiled at every path by the good guys. He just, that's the kind of villain this guy seems to be. Even in the games, he was kind of like that. He was a big old dork. There's something to the way Jim Carrey plays this guy where that's not the case. They didn't go the easy route. Because at the end of the day, you got to remember, Dr. Robotnik is a genius. He has a 300 level IQ. He builds robots better than anybody. He is an absolute genius, and he's also incredibly evil. So he is chasing after our heroes from start to finish. He is not letting up. He's relentless, and he's got all these drones to do his dirty work for him. And it's actually genuinely scary because of how smart he is. Carrey plays him as a smart guy. He's not running around saying things incorrectly and his stooges are correcting him the way you would expect something like this to be. Everything Robotnik says is science. Everything is true. He's essentially approaching this as if Tony Stark was a psychopathic murderer. He's still got the IQ and he's still building machines and doing things you wouldn't even dream of doing. His brain is going at a faster rate than everybody else. He's just a psycho about it, and he wants to kill this little blue hedgehog because he thinks he has to. That made for a surprisingly really scary villain. The whole time I was like, man, they gotta run. They gotta get away from this guy. And I never thought I'd be feeling that way about Jim Carrey as Dr. Robotnik in a Sonic movie. Now, spoiler time, we gotta talk about these two credits scenes here, okay? First of all, I was actually pretty content with the way Jim Carrey looked as Robotnik. I thought he looked fine. He got the point across. He was scary. He was evil. He had the mustache. All was well. Then we get that scene in the credits where we find out, he's alive. He survived being thrown into that other dimension. He shaves his head, though, and he's gone crazier, and now he looks like this. They're obviously promising some kind of return for him in the sequel, and having Jim Carrey show up in a movie looking like that is really, really cool. But not as cool as what happened next. And if you stayed during the middle of the credits, you know exactly what happened next, because that portal opens up at the top of that mountain, and our pal Tails comes jumping out looking for Sonic and praying that he finds Sonic before it's too late. And that line, before it's too late, tells you something. It tells you there's some bad stuff going down in Sonic's world, and he needs to bring Sonic back there so they can save the day. That, folks, got everybody in that movie theater going, oh, oh. Which, if you're watching this, Paramount, that should tell you something. It should tell you that that is the Sonic movie that people want to see. This movie was fine, but a road trip to San Francisco, keep that for something else. If you're going to use Sonic, use Sonic. Use the Sonic world. Because guess what? Now we've been promised a sequel where Tails is in it, where they're probably going back to the Sonic universe, and where Dr. Robotnik looks exactly like Dr. Robotnik. Why are you promising those things in a sequel? Why wasn't all of that in movie 1? That's the problem with movies like this. What you gave us was a decent B- film, but if you're just going to keep plotting out laziness and then promising the real stuff if we watch the first one, then you're not doing your job as creators. You're just cashing in a paycheck. Yes, we spend most of our time with these two characters, and yeah, they're both extraordinarily likable. Who wouldn't like them? One of them is just this adorable, wide-eyed hero who you just want to wrap your arms around in a great big hug, and the other one is Sonic the Hedgehog. What's not to like? But you have to understand what makes your character great, and you have to understand what your fans want to see. People like Marvel understand what their fans want to see. That's why you never got a movie where it was just Iron Man going on a road trip to San Francisco. So here's what we're going to do, Hollywood. We're going to play a game, and everybody watching at home, join in the game too. Think of a property of something that you would like to see adapted into a movie. Now fill in the blank with that property. Blank goes on an epic adventure featuring characters and worlds from their source material, or blank goes on a road trip with James Marsden to San Francisco. If that sounds like a bad movie, which it probably will, maybe consider the fact that you're doing these adaptations wrong. Will we ever get a sequel to this? I don't know. Really, I honestly, bottom of my heart, hope so. I hope we get Sonic movies set in the Sonic world, because there's a lot of goodness to be had there. But if you just want to enjoy a B- kid-friendly flick that really is aimed at younger viewers, you're going to have a good time with this. Like I said, the 8-year-olds liked it, the teens liked it, the adults liked it. Nobody was not having fun. And at the end of the day, you can't fault the movie for that. So that has been Sonic the Hedgehog. I've been Andrew Fantasia. You've been awesome. I will see you here next time. And until then, adios.